pregnant or something else is going on, or, you know, health issues or something along that line, where our interest in each other wanes, and there's not a whole lot of that. Now, we often flex back over to the other side, but it's a very swing situation for me, where we go into series of hypersexuality, and then it slows down, and then it goes into the hypo. We don't have like consistency. It's a weird swing both ways. So that's where right. I sit with mine, is I swing from both back and forth.
I am so sorry, but the only thing that keeps popping in my head every time he says he swings both, that we swing both ways. Motherfucker, we're all bisexual here. Yes, what the fuck?
Yes.
I mean, you know, he couldn't have fucking phrased that one any better, honestly. I mean, let's be real.
I'm a whore. I will sleep with anything. As long as it's consenting. As long as it's consenting.
I was. And it's funny because that's a joke. Like a long-standing joke in my house, right? Is that I was such a whore that basically, if it wasn't nailed down, I was in it for the longest time. And as you were saying about, you know, nowadays with you guys swinging back and forth, if the opportunity presented itself to me nowadays, hard pass, because I have not got the energy, the spoons, or the motivation to chase that anymore. I just don't. Right before, it might have been the thrill of the hunt or something like that, right? The dopamine rush that you get with the thrill of the chase kind of thing. But nowadays, it's just, I can't be fucking bothered. It is too much work for too little payout.
Welcome to Sex Talk Time.
Hi. Apparently, this is Katie and Eric +1. I'll be the +1.
Right. And to be honest, I don't chase things. Like, opportunities come to me, and I will take advantage of them if, you know, it fits the situation that I'm interested in. But again, like I said, if I'm with somebody for a long period of time.
Remember, ladies, you can email him at patrick@imahorror.com.
I'm glad you put a fake fucking email in there, because if we put our actual email in there and I started getting fucking messages.
Oh, God. Oh, okay. And there's it's the problem is it's inherently shameful, right? Because
absolutely.
When I swing to the hypo side, it's with my partner that I'm invested in relationship wise, right? And I feel shame that I'm not attracted, and I want to, you know, I don't want to have sex with my partner, and it really tears up your head a little bit, because you're like, we just had, you know, this streak where it was really, really good, and now I don't want anything to do with it, and it could really be a shaming effect on you as well, which is problematic.
I completely agree. As somebody who is much closer to being asexual than I am to sexual activity, like, I really don't need it in my life. Married to a man who is relatively, you know, normal in what he wants, and it's hard, because it is that pressing guilt of, not tonight, honey. And I never use like the excuse like, oh no, I have a headache. Like, it's always very much the, I'm not feeling this, I'm sorry. And the frustration that can build up over years.
Yeah, the headache line doesn't work. They proved that cures a headache anyway.
I think I tried using that when we first got together, like once, and he probably said something along those lines. But no, typically we're very open about.
Right.
Communication is key, people. Relationship advice with Lee. Bam.
I'm trying to rope my point back in.
Sorry.
No, it's not you. It's not you, it's me.
It's not you, it's your ADHD.
Well, I'm going to bring up one thing real quick.
I got it before I forget. How you were saying about, you know, not feeling attracted. You know, the guilt that you would have about, because when you swing into the hypo, the guilt you have about not feeling attracted to your partner. I have the opposite. I have the guilt of not feeling attractive. So, and that's one that I fight with. I don't fight with like, my wife to me is beautiful, absolutely beautiful, stunning, always has been, always will be. But to me, it's the opposite problem of, I don't feel attractive. I don't feel worth being here. I don't feel worth the attention, etc., etc. And that's the one that I have to fight with constantly.
You mean you have imposter syndrome about yourself?
A little bit of RSD, maybe? Yeah.
No, but
I don't know what that's like.
I've never heard of it. I'm sorry. No, I don't.
I love everything about myself, my voice included.
Well, your hair is fucking awesome.
One of the other things that we have not discussed is that, let's be honest, sex in and of itself is inherently repetitive. And what do people with ADHD struggle with? Repetitive functions, right? So it's not surprising that ADHD people struggle to keep focus during sex as well. And that's another place where shame comes into effect of, how can you not be attracted to somebody when you're doing, you know, fun things with them and you can't keep your focus on that? There's there's a lot of shame that ADHD people can put on themselves based on sex. And it's fucking terrible because it's supposed to be something super fun.
And here I thought shame and guilt were synonymous with the disorder.
Okay. Are we ready to go ahead and go into something a little less deep?
I like the way that you put that.
Yes, please. Wait a second.
I'll see what you did there.
Oh, that was a delayed reaction on my part.
That was totally a delayed reaction on your part. It was amazing. Anyways.
It's also important to note that people with ADHD are at higher risk for having career issues. They have a harder time holding down a job, and part of this has to do with our inability to focus on completing a task or focus on a task to completion. We also have issues with working memory, and this can cause issues when you forget meetings or certain things that you need to keep track of, or you skip steps and things that you need to do. And there are more. If you compare the ADHD community to a neurotypical community that doesn't have any mental health problems, people with ADHD are going to be fired from jobs more often. They're going to be put on probation more often, and they are going to be passed up for jobs more often because of their history when it comes to working. And it's the same with school.
Yeah.
About 1/3 of individuals who have been in high school and have ADHD, and especially those that are untreated, drop out of high school. And that is a category that I actually fall into personally.
Same.
I barely graduated. I graduated, but I barely graduated.
I didn't. I dropped out halfway through the 12th grade.
Going back to the career thing real quick, ADHD people are more likely to transition through multiple jobs as well, which can be incredibly problematic on a resume, because if you're not staying in a long-term job and you have a really high job turnover history, you will probably get passed up for other jobs.
And this one here, I didn't actually become a statistic of that. I have quite the opposite. I ended up having a loyalty issue, whereas I would stay in a place that I felt completely unappreciated, used, whatnot, just because it was a security, right? I had a security in having the job, but I didn't branch out into trying to find other ones because I was stable at the time, right? And I ended up staying at places far longer than I should have.
It seems like you're either on one end of the spectrum or the other, where you either have the issues where you have problems with job retention, or you stick loyally to a company that doesn't deserve you. So
I'm the same way with service providers.
Yeah.
With my previous cell phone.
Not a lie, though.
I stuck with them for far too long. And then finally I got to a point where another company showed up and gave a smoking deal, and I jumped ship that fast.
This is not the guy who's had Verizon since 2003 and has never changed.
The other thing that I want to talk about is going back to relationships. People with ADHD are at a higher risk for finding themselves in some form of an abusive relationship. And some of the things that happen when you have ADHD, such as your working memory issues, your executive dysfunction, can also increase the likelihood of a person with ADHD suffering from gaslighting from somebody else. Not speaking as somebody who has suffered from gaslighting from partners or family members or anything like that.
No.
I'm looking at you,
would
Mom.
have no knowledge of this.
This is not a scientific fact, but this is something that I've learned from talking to the people who follow me and stuff like that, is ADHD people tend to attract narcs or narcissists on a regular basis.
100%.
And almost every ADHD person that I know that has talked to me has some type of narcissistic abuse in their background from somewhere. I mean, mine was my mother. Lee was her mother. Spaz,
it's himself.
Yeah.
It's me. Yeah. My wife will agree with you.
But it's very, very common for narcissistic people to find ADHD people and attach themselves to us because we're easy prey for them.
Well, we're easy prey, and it's easy to make us second guess our thought processes because we already second guess ourselves on a daily basis as it is. So if I'm in a relationship with someone who is narcissistic and they decide that they want to tell me that I was supposed to do XYZ, but I distinctly remember them telling me that I needed to hold off on it, then that is a perfect opportunity to be gaslit by the narc, who will say, no, I told you to do this thing and you didn't do this thing, when in fact you were asked to hold off on doing it. But because you have this pattern of self-doubt, you start to align your thought processes with your abuser.
Well, not only that, they're also using our flawed working memory against us at that point, because they can say, I told you to do this, but you forgot. And then you thinking to yourself, you're second guessing, as you just said, did I forget, right? I remember the topic being discussed, but I don't remember whether being told to do the thing or to hold off on the thing. But I remember the topic.
And another factor that we haven't talked about yet is the fact that ADHD people tend to be people pleasers.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to put ourselves at a detriment and try to take care of the other person's needs or wants or desires way more often than we will ourselves. And we will actually do physical or emotional harm to ourselves to help another person. So the narc will take advantage of that as well.
Exactly. Anyway, that was my cheery myth.
All right. Well, I'm in a much better mood now.
Okay. I will say that my myth is not nearly as deep or as damaging as the last two. So
I'm so glad.
So I went ahead and decided to do my myth on you can't have ADHD if you got good grades.
Bitch, come again?
We covered that in the last section.
Where was I? No, I've heard this one a lot. That a lot of people were gifted in high school, burnt out, and people told them that you were so smart, you can't have ADHD. And we've talked about it a lot. Intelligence means nothing to ADHD.
Not a goddamn thing.
There is no correlation between ADHD and intelligence.
That's like saying that somebody doesn't need glasses because they got passing grades in school.
I mean, and let's think about this here. Like, right, I was one of the kids who got bad grades. Right? I barely passed high school. I graduated with 1.8 GPA. I also had the highest SAT in my school and a perfect SAT or ACT. I'm sorry. I graduated high school purely on my test grades because I did no homework. I put no effort into school whatsoever except for testing, and I passed on all of my test grades. But I know a lot of other people. Let's talk about some people in the server. Like, look at Katie and Chaos. They're both highly intelligent people.
Oh yes.
Who had different interactions with their schooling and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
right? So intelligence means nothing.
No, not a damn
when you
thing.
compare it to ADHD.
No, in the Discord, yeah, we've got a lot of exceptionally bright people. Exceptionally. And it's astounding. It's borderline intimidating sometimes.
Take a look at Still Not All There, right?
Yeah.
I mean, she has a PhD.
Yeah.
That takes work and dedication.
Did she have one or going for one?
No, she has one. She's did a couple of videos on having a PhD and being part of like the 1.9% of people in England who have a PhD.
Well, in the UK.
She has ADHD. So obviously ADHD and intelligence there's no correlation there.
Do you hear that invalidating guy who decided to tell somebody earlier this week that because you have 4 degrees with ADHD that you aren't buying the fact that people with ADHD can struggle with things? Your
I think we
intelligence
all-
does not equate to a disability.
No, I'm sorry. I have no idea who you're referring to. I did not make a takedown video of that person debunking all of the bullshit that he said, nor did I get a community guidelines violation for said video. It didn't happen. I don't know what you... Fuck you.
No, and we all talked about that. And you know what? Okay, so you've got 4 degrees. What are your 4 degrees in? Because they were not in psychology or medicine, because you talked
or
about
anything to do with mental health.
He had no fucking idea what he was talking about. How we were
said that
addicted to
ADHD was an
dopamine
addiction of a dopamine and serotonin.
and serotonin, right? Like, fucking how dumb can you be?
Well, I mean, not very. That guy's got 4 degrees, including
Like,
a
that was
master's.
just so ignorant.
He's got to be super bright.
Yeah, right? I mean, he obviously has a great marketing strategy, fucking driving all the ADHD people away. Like a fucking great life coach there, dumbass.
Well, no, he just points them towards his fucking ASMR audiobooks where he whispers sweet nothings in your ear and tells you, basically that it's a superpower.
Yeah, there's no correlation between intelligence and ADHD. People can be hyper. I mean, Lee and I have talked about this before. We have high IQs. It doesn't mean that we can't have ADHD as well. Actually, there's a lot of people who have higher IQs and tend to have neurodivergencies as well.
I know that having a higher IQ is linked with higher instances of depression. and anxiety.
There is no correlation. There is no proof that if you got